Welcome back to Connect the Game. It's episode 5, back with another fantastic chat. Once again in the baseball world, we took our 1 week break for basketball, but you knew we'd find our way back to baseball. I'm your host, Tim Crowley, joined by one of my favorite guests we've had yet so far, my former broadcast partner, now one of the broadcasters with the Reading Fightin Phils and the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Jake Starr joins the show. Brother, great to have you on.
I appreciate you having me on, Tim. It's always a pleasure. And I know you said we took a break from baseball and now we're back to baseball. I mean, look, it's April. The sun is shining. The temperature is finally turning. So, hey, I mean, as much baseball as we can get, we're always here for that.
Yeah, you still have some fresh broadcast likes to start the season. You're only a few weeks in, but how is minor league life? The start of year 3, which I'm sure we'll dive further into as we go on in this episode.
It's been good so far. I've told a couple of people so far. I mean, I'm still very quote unquote young, I think, for like the scope of the industry, but I feel like this year was the fastest that I feel like I've hit a stride on both the broadcast side and both on, the media relations side of the job too. And just the whole like PR department that we have here in Reading. And it's not a big department, but like what we are as a group, we've hit a stride very early and very quickly, which I don't want to say it's been the case the last couple of years. I think a lot of that's just the nature of, when you do it a couple of years, you get to a point where it's like, hey, like I know what I'm doing, right? And those adjustments, they come a lot quicker. But I'm sure that I know you talked to Tyler Danberg, I know you talked to Riley Pay. They both work in minor league baseball. I'm sure they both can agree, and everyone that works minor league baseball agrees. The first couple of weeks, it's a lot of, like you said, early season legs, and it's not even just the broadcast side of things. It's everything, right? It's like you're doing game notes for the first time in 6 months. And I'll tell you, like, early season game notes are tough because, like, these are very niche things I know I'm bringing up right now, but it's like high lows. On the second game of the season, you're filling out every section of your high low, right? That takes 20 minutes to do, where by August it takes 2 minutes, a quick scan. Okay, yeah, no one had 8 hits last night. We're good to go, right? But no, it's just kind of getting your legs under you. But I feel like us here in Reading, we've gotten off to a good spot. And it's definitely the quickest that I feel like we've gotten the hang of things. And I have a great support group here in Reading. Everyone's done a great job so far. So long-winded answer, but no, I mean, things have gone very well so far for it only being April 23rd, to say the least.
There's plenty that goes into your job. We're going to talk about that as this interview goes on, but I know your favorite part of the day is when you get to put your headset on. Take me back. When did you know that that was what you wanted to do with the rest of your life, or at least in this early stage of your career in communication, specifically in baseball?
Yeah, I think I give a similar answer when I'm asked this question. When you're a little kid, well, what's the dream? I want to be a professional baseball player. I want to play for the Phillies. I want to win the World Series for the Phillies, and for as long as I can remember, that was the dream. And then you get to middle school, you get to high school, and it becomes, if I could play college baseball, I'd be happy. I don't think I'm going to play professional. In high school, I was 5'9", 155 pounds. I mean, there's some guys that are that size playing pro ball, but I knew I was not that caliber. But I always loved baseball, right? I mean, one of my first idols was Harry Kalas, and listening to Harry Kalas call Phillies games growing up was, what I did. I would walk around the house impersonating him. That ball is out of here, like Ryan Howard, and just walking around the house saying all that kind of stuff.
He still does
Uh,
that, by the way. That's not new. That's not new either. That's not
that's a
some old thing. Yeah,
that's a fair
that's
point.
still a daily
That's
thing.
that's a fair point. And I actually dropped an out of here on a call last week, and I don't script my home run calls. I think I've heard someone once say, don't script your home run calls because every good one is taken. I think that my home run calls have kind of, I mean, I think they've come natural, but at the same time, I think I'll hear a little bit of who I've listened to growing up come out when I call a home run. I say gone a lot on home runs. Tom McCarthy, right? If I drop an out of here, that's Harry Kalas, right? But I remember the day Harry Kalas died, right? April 13th, 2009. We were at either the Franklin Institute or the Philadelphia Art Museum for a field trip in third grade. And I remember finding out, and I was devastated, right? It was like losing a family member. And I think at that point forward, like, hey, like you love baseball, you love the Phillies, and I think you love sports broadcasting, right? So you get older, you get cut from the high school baseball team a couple of times, and you realize, hey, I don't think I'm gonna play for the Phillies one day, but what's the next best thing? And to me, that was going into sports media at some point and doing something. And I got an opportunity my junior year of high school to do public address announcing for the soccer team. That was kind of my first ever time talking into a microphone, and I was as scared as could be the first time I did it, and I probably thought I sounded good, and I'm very glad there's no recording of that because I probably sounded like crap. When you look back on it. So I did that. I did swimming my senior year, PA. I did a lot more soccer my senior year. I started writing. When I went to Penn State, I kind of knew, okay, I want to get into sports media some way or another. I didn't know if play-by-play was going to be my niche or writing or what it was going to be, but I kind of knew pretty early on and pretty quickly that that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I'd broadcast Madden games growing up. I'm sure you probably did the same. I broadcast games on the show. I remember sitting in our office at home and there'd be a Sixers game on and just sitting there at 15 years old broadcasting the game. And I mean, hopefully I didn't piss anybody off, while broadcasting a game while watching it. But no, I mean, it was fun, and I knew pretty quickly that was the path I wanted to go.
And that obviously takes you out to State College at Penn State, comm radio, tons of different opportunities as writing, on air, play-by-play, television, so many opportunities. And we talked about this with Tyler Danberg, who I guess we could call our successor in terms of Cotuit
In essence,
history.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk to our successor and, having him over in the Big Ten with you at Ohio State, the opportunities now for kids to broadcast at a power, then Power Five, because you are old, Power Five, Power Four level, that's a very cool opportunity to grow up as a broadcaster in that type of setting, especially with a team in Penn State, particularly, on the football field that has that type of pedigree, that type of national attention. How grateful are you for that opportunity to cover such a big school on that realm, and everything that goes into that, whether it's comm radio, Big Ten Network, Big Ten Plus, everything that goes into that.
It's kind of crazy when you say Power Four because like it just doesn't sound right yet,
No,
and I don't know
yeah,
if it's ever, I don't know if it's ever going to sound right. But it is also, the DH in the National League I thought wasn't going
right.
to feel right, and by now it feels totally natural. Anyway, so yeah, I think that with Penn State, I that was always my dream school from even before when I knew I wanted to do sports broadcasting. I knew I wanted to go to Penn State, and why did I want to go to Penn State? Because of the sports teams, because of the football teams, right? Like one of my earliest memories was the 2008 Penn State team and just being devastated when they lost to Iowa that year. I remember when James Franklin got hired, then they blocked the kick against Ohio State. Granted, I was a lot older at that point, but still. The thing about Penn State is going into it, which is kind of crazy, I didn't realize how great of a communication school they had. I knew they had a lot of big time sports teams, and that was kind of the draw that, hey, like, you have a chance to cover Penn State football, Penn State basketball, Penn State hockey, Penn State baseball. And I know that some of those other sports aren't up to the level of Penn State football in terms of success. I know hockey had a good run this year, but, how many schools out there have a football team that plays in a 100,000 seat stadium, a basketball team that plays in an NBA size arena, a baseball team that plays in a minor league baseball facility, and a hockey team that plays in a 6,000 seat state of the art venue? There's not many teams or schools that are like that. So going to Penn State, you had a chance to be around that atmosphere and be around that. And no, it's also, there's the scarier side of it too, right? Like, you're a small fish in a very big pond, and you need to bust your butt to kind of climb the ladder and get to where you want to be, right? When I started, you mentioned comm radio, the student radio station at Penn State. When I started there were over 100, right, freshmen in comm radio that year. And when I graduated, there was a core group of maybe 10 seniors, right? So it's very difficult. And I tell kids when I go back and speak to them, or when I was a senior speaking back, like, hey, like, it's not easy. It's very competitive. And you, excuse me, have to put in the work from day one because, the minute you fall behind, you don't want to be playing catch up for the next 4 years. But, I was very lucky to have the opportunity to broadcast, I think 13, 14 different varsity sports at Penn State: hockey, basketball, baseball, tons of football. Get to go on the road and call, football games. Got to go to the Super Bowl my senior year because of the relationships that the prior people at Penn State have formed. So getting to do that, getting the, call games for Big Ten Network Plus, those were opportunities that I was very grateful that I was able to get over at Penn State. And I think there's other schools I could have gone to. I would have had very similar opportunities, but getting to do it at a Power Four school, which feels so weird to say, Power Four, Power Five when I was there, school, was just a terrific opportunity and one that I think really set me up for whatever was going to come next.
What's your favorite venue you've ever called a game in?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Uh, I think the easy answer is probably Beaver Stadium, right? I mean, it's so historic. It's such a, I mean, it's a big stadium. Like there's 107,000 seats in that stadium, right? So I think that's up there. I caught a game at Auburn that was really cool. I think Camp Randall was probably at Wisconsin one of my favorite road trips I had the opportunity to make. So I mean, probably one of those are probably up there for a favorite venue I've ever caught a game in.
Again, I think there's so many media members there, but it feels like the list of people who can say they covered a Super Bowl in whatever capacity still is relatively small. To do that in college is obviously extraordinary. You guys are out on Radio Row throughout the course of the week, getting some cool guests. But the game itself, to be in the building covering a Super Bowl, being there in LA, SoFi Stadium, Bengals, Rams, great game that went down to the wire. Walk me through that day, how you guys kind of went about your coverage, and did you feel it in the moment, how surreal of an opportunity that was?
Yeah, no, I mean the day was great. The whole week was great. Being on Radio Row during the week and then getting a chance to be at the Super Bowl on Sunday. We're on it was on the West Coast, obviously, so like your mental clock's a little differently, right? Growing up, it's always the Super Bowl's at 6:30, so mentally it's like, oh, I have all day. On the West Coast, it's a little bit different, so it's like we want to get there early, right? But early there is, I think we got there around 11 o'clock in the morning. Me and my co-GM at the time, Andre Magaro, got there at like, 11 o'clock in the morning and kind of just tried to take it in at first, right? I think we did a lap around SoFi Stadium, which it was hot out and we were carrying equipment and wearing suits. So that was maybe not the most pleasant experience in the world. It was pretty hot, but it was awesome. Did a couple of stand-ups and kind of just, we had done so much content already throughout the week. So like that day was kind of more of a like, hey, like we just want to take it in type of thing. So, did that. We went in, found our spot on press row. We were in the auxiliary press box. We were like in like the 500 level, like all the way up top in kind of like temporary press row seating. Got set up, tested our equipment, made sure it worked. I remember we recorded a kind of like a broadcast open, like we put our headsets on and recorded like an open up there just to have, and then kind of just tried to take it all in, right? Ate lunch or dinner or whatever you consider it at that point, and just took it all in, covered the game through tweets. Obviously, we couldn't broadcast the game, due to rights agreements and stuff like that. But then after the game, we had a chance to host a post game show for an hour after the game, which I thought was awesome. And I think when we were wrapping up the show that night, it was kind of when everything started to kick in, and we were kind of like doing our thank yous to everybody, and it was like, wow, like this is cool, right? Like we got to come and be at and cover a Super Bowl, and that was awesome. It was interesting though because when you're there, being in person for a Super Bowl versus watching it on TV, in my opinion, is very different. Uh, I think it's an event that's built for TV. But it was still like a surreal experience being there and kind of just watching everything unfold and saying, hey, like I was at a Super Bowl. I thought that was really cool.
Couple months later, you continue your baseball journey. Obviously, you had been in the summer baseball realm before, but that's where our paths crossed and Cotuit for that 2022 season, which feels like it's getting talked a lot of quite a bit lately, with so many of those first half guys making their way to the show. Chandler Simpson, Victor Scott, to name a few. Obviously, an incredibly fun team to watch. We had the third member of our team, the person that separated you and I in the booth, and Riley on here
Yeah.
for the first episode. Um, what stands out when you think about Cotuit in your path there, and what made that summer special?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things. I think one is the quality of baseball you're seeing. There's no there's no environment where you're gonna have that much collegiate baseball talent together ever, right? Like the SEC might be the best college baseball conference in the country, but the Cape takes like the best players from the best teams and puts them all together. So it's the fact that like you're surrounded by the best talent, on the field, but also the best talent off the field. The broadcasters, the media members, the interns, everything, the coaches, so on and so forth. Uh, I think that talent was really cool. And I think saying there's a lot of guys here that are going to go play professional baseball. And there's a lot of guys here that are going to go play in the big leagues, right? Like Cotuit's had a bunch. And I mean, since our year, off the top of my head, Chandler Simpson, Brooks Baldwin, Graham Pauley, Victor Scott. Maybe I'm missing one or two, but I know those four for sure have already cracked the big leagues. And a whole bunch are playing professionally. And I've had a chance to kind of run into a few, Harrison Cohen, Ryan Ritter, guys who played with us in Cotuit who are now playing professionally and hopefully get to the big leagues one day. And knowing that guys like, one of my favorites growing up, Chase Utley, played for the Kettleers and went on to play in the big leagues. I know his jersey's hanging up in the like the VIP suite up at Lowell Park in Cotuit, but it's like it's cool. And then I think on the non-baseball side is the relationships you get to form. I'm a very relationship centric person. That's one of my favorite things about the job. Like number one is obviously getting to call professional baseball. Number two is the relationships that you get with your players, you get with your coaches, right? Like it's cool to say like, hey, like I can go see a guy that played with us in Cotuit and catch up with him. Like we haven't missed a beat, right? Like seeing Ryan Ritter in Hartford last year, or hopefully seeing Harrison Cohen with Somerset at some point this summer. Or even guys that like I didn't know, or guys that played on other teams. I can go talk to them and be like, hey, like, you played for Hyannis in 2022. I was with Cotuit in 2022. Like our paths crossed. Or even just seeing guys that I never knew, like a Nolan Shanuel, like getting to the big leagues so quickly after playing on the Cape. It's like, wow, like I caught his games a year ago. But just the relationships, and even the relationships not with players, with my host family, with the other interns, with, of course, my broadcast partners, you and Riley. Of course, those are things that I really value, and they're things that you don't get, unless you're there. And I think baseball is a very relationship based sport. I think relationships are so important in baseball. So just having those relationships, you never know where it can take you, and you just realize kind of how small of a world the baseball industry is.
Do you have a favorite game you called that summer? I know there might be an at bat that stands out, but is there a game that
I mean,
really?
the at bat I think is the Tommy Troy walk off in his first game as a starter. I think my favorite game, and I know the series didn't end the way that we wanted it to, but I think it was game two at Hyannis. And we just we looked bad in game one. They came out just driven in game two, totally stepped on them to start game two. Some crazy plays in that first inning. Just that whole game was super fun. The fans got into it. I won't drop any names, but there was a certain fan that was having a little back and forth with a fan from Hyannis who was sitting up in what was a quote unquote skybox. What's a skybox to this day? I don't know. Just that whole game was really fun. We probably should have turned the crowd mic down a little bit because we had the whole Cats fan sitting behind us, and and that was actually the game I used for my reel to get this job. I would listen back to it, I'm like, oh my God, like everyone's super loud. There was a lot of back and forth. There was some extracurriculars that went on away from the field between game one and game two. So I just think the emotions of everything and then winning that game was super cool. And I thought deep down we were going to go into game three and just roll on them after the way game two went, but it wasn't the case. Also, I just remember this Harrison Cohen also absolutely was it 6 innings, I think?
Yeah.
Absolutely just shoved in that game. And I'm still convinced that that game is what got Harrison Cohen a professional contract because he signed at the Yankees, what, a day or two later? Like, so yeah, that was awesome. Like his final start of Cotuit, he was just locked in.
It would be cool to get him on to tell that story at some point because again, like there was obviously it was the playoffs, so it was a postseason feel, but there was that type of energy from the first pitch of that game. And again, Hyannis credit to that roster and that coaching staff for getting the job done in game three. But again, I used that inning for my job. For my job applications, obviously didn't get me as far in broadcasting as you did, but
You
again,
said
like
it.
it was an incredible game, and again, it vaulted a lot of people. We can call that for you. We can call that for Harrison. Like it was a really cool experience. Whether on the mic, away from the field, or just any of the broadcast memories from that summer, what stands out?
I mean, just like a lot of like I don't say dumb, just a lot of like crazy quips that happen. Like the one-liners that you drop on the air. Uh just the back and forth with your broadcast partners. Like I think me, you, and Riley had a very good we had a good back and forth. Like I remember there was one time we came back from a break and it was a post game show, and I don't know why I go Jake Starr, Tim Crowley, and I mistake Riley for one of our players, Max Gig, one of our pitchers, and I go Jake Starr, Tim Crowley, Max Gig, and I'm like, what the heck did I just say? And there were also just times where like one of us would say something, nothing bad, but like just something where it's like they say it and you're just like, what the heck did you just say? And you go off the air and you're like, why did I say that? And you just start laughing. I think that was cool. I know there was the Father's Day game against Brewster. It was a doubleheader, and it was cold as could be. I know there's an infamous picture of the three of us that I absolutely hate that picture, and it gets used on everything. Because I was like chewing a granola bar or something. And I was like, I just need to eat. I think we won that first game 1-0 because Carter Trice scored on a walk-off wild pitch. But then it's funny because in the next week, and we had a doubleheader at Orleans. The weekend before was maybe 50 degrees. The next weekend it was like 90 degrees, and that was like brutal. But it was also that Orleans game, Riley's play-by-play debut, which of course has vaulted her into Portland and now Tacoma. So just kind of being there for that, I think, was really cool. And just I don't know, joking around with the interns, having fun. Dinner with my host family, Becky and Paul Manikis, and my summer brothers, Justin Mickness, Ryan Galaney, Colby Wilkerson. I thought that was fun. I mean, look, I could sit here all day and just talk about all the different memories and stuff that we've done. But yeah, those are just kind of a few to name.
You get your professional opportunity, a few months later. I still remember the call, that you called me the day you got this job. Take me through the process of what's landed you in Reading and what sparked the last 3 years of some really cool opportunities for you.
Yeah, I think you were in class when I called you at first, then you called me back later. And I still remember where I was. I just gotten off the exit on the highway to get home. Yeah, no, that was a fun day. Yeah, I mean, with COVID, I ended up actually graduating a semester late. It's my decision. But yeah, graduated. I did an extra semester at Penn State. I was the old man on campus, is what a lot of people called me. And yeah, I went back to school that fall. I knew I wanted to go into minor league baseball at that point, so I kind of went back to school and I was like, okay, like I need to have everything done. My reel, the game recap sample, game notes sample, everything. And I kind of just started, monitoring the job market, monitoring the industry, and just throwing applications out there. There are a few that came across that I applied to, some I heard back from, some I didn't. And then it was like mid-October, I think, and I found out that there was an opening at Reading. And at that point, I was like, I'm just graduating college. Like, I'm not gonna get a number one position. Like I'm not. Like, I'm gonna be a number two somewhere, an assistant. And then I remember I was in one of the like voiceover booths at Penn State, the media center for comm radio, and I was talking to a kid who had actually interned in Reading the year before, and he's like, oh, like you're graduating, like what's your plan? I'm like, oh, I wanted to get into minor league baseball, and he goes, yeah, I applied for the PR internship at Reading. So at that point, I'm like, I should probably at least send a feeler out. So I believe it was November 1st. I sent an email out, like a whole long, list of everything. And here's my resume, my cover letter, samples, etc. Didn't hear back for like a week. My rule of thumb always was, if you don't hear back in a week, you send a follow-up email. So I think it was the 8th, which I believe would have been a Tuesday, maybe, or a Wednesday. I don't remember. I sent a follow-up, and I still remember where I was sitting. I was in Pep Boys Auto in State College, getting my oil changed, and I got an
Hopefully,
email.
hopefully for cheaper than you did on the Cape.
It was probably like 100, so I think a little cheaper.
You got up to 150. I remember you called me.
Yeah,
You're like, I got up to 115 on the Cape, and I'm like, yeah, I just found 45. So have
yeah,
fun.
cheap oil changes. That's the way to go. But I got an email from our assistant GM who's still here. And he's like, hey, do you want to interview? And at that point, I'm like freaking out, right? I'm like, it's Reading, it's the Phillies. Like this is like the dream scenario. Like I totally was prepared to move far away somewhere and be wherever, whatever the league was. And I would reply, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I can come there. Do we want on Zoom? Like, what do we want to do? I think you were the first person I texted after I got the email, and I was like, holy expletive, not a bad expletive. Reading wants to interview me, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's huge. I remember I was prepping for a football game that Saturday, and I'm like, I can't even focus right now. Like, how am I supposed to pay attention with that? So do that. Interviewed Friday morning on Zoom. I barely slept the night before. I was so freaking nervous. I interviewed for our assistant GM and our director of marketing. Thought it went really well. And then early the next week, I got an email from our assistant GM saying, "Hey, do you want to come in for a second interview to the stadium during your Thanksgiving break?" And at that point, it's like, holy crap, like this seems pretty big. Uh, and I was trying to keep a lot of this in the down low just because I've always been a big, keep that stuff close to your chest, but also, I kind of always liken like my job search to like the dating search, because it's like if you start telling people things before it really is kind of materialized, A, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and B, people are going to ask questions and they're going to go, how's that girl or how's that job? And it's like, well, it didn't work out. So I kind of kept on the down low. Like, obviously, my family knew. I think you knew. Maybe one or two other people knew, but that was pretty much it. Uh, so yeah, I set up an interview for like the Monday of Thanksgiving week. So the rest of that week went by. I actually went to Rutgers that weekend to call a Penn State football game. Penn State Rutgers called a Westchester University basketball game that Sunday. Went home. Woke up that Monday. Drove up to Reading, which is about an hour from home. Got there whatever it was, like 10 o'clock in the morning, and interviewed. Did a tour of the stadium. About an hour later, went back into our assistant GM's office. I was sitting down. He was to my right. Our marketing director was to my left because they used to share an office. And he's like, "Yeah, we want to offer you the position." And I was not expecting to be offered the position that day because in my first interview, they were like, "Yeah, like I don't know, maybe December. We'll hope to have an answer." Probably they're like, "Yeah, like want to offer you the position. You start January 3rd. Like you're going to be our PR broadcast guy." And I was just like, yeah, like I didn't know what to say. And I remember I was sitting there and our like director of marketing is like, "Yeah, like we're excited to have you aboard." And our AGM is like, "Hey, like you didn't even accept the job offer yet." And she's like, "I think he's on." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm on." So I left that day, made a bunch of phone calls to people. Uh and then I think I got back that day and sent an email being like, "Yeah, in case there was any concern, like I am accepting this job right here, right now." I actually had another interview scheduled the next day with another team in person, which I since emailed them and was like, "Hey, yeah, I'm not gonna make it in. I just accepted a position with Reading." So it was a very a fulfilling feeling, but B also like it was a very great feeling knowing that like, hey, I still have 2.5 weeks left to college and I already have like a job lined up, which I know especially in this industry is so rare. Like it never happens. So I was very thankful, uh, fortunate for that, and went back to school, graduated from Penn State that December, started Reading January 3rd. Here we are 2.5 years later. Been here ever since.
You've dropped little hintlets of it, throughout the course of the interview. But the feeling of doing this in your hometown organization, growing up the Phillies fan that you did, being an hour from home, doing this for guys that you talked about, so the guys that got like coming through to it, but now all your, those Phillies you grew up watching, having, a stop in Reading at some point. How much I know that was so much of this when you first got this job as well, getting to do this for the Phillies, in that organization, but now a couple years into it seeing guys that have debuted and now have made an impact in Philadelphia and in your role being able to go get credentials and cover a game at Citizens Bank Park. How much of that is still really present for you in your state of mind about this job?
I try not to forget it, and I try not to take it for granted because I think with any job, and especially a dream job, like, this time of year, you're just so busy that there's so much going on that you really like sometimes fail to, take a step back and being like, oh crap, like this is cool. Like I know one of my favorite days I've had here ever was when Brandon Marsh rehabbed with us last year, and maybe he'll rehab with us again because he's on the IL right now. But I think that was one of my favorite days, just getting a chance to like interact with Brandon Marsh and facilitate all the media and get to interview him. Like to me, like getting to interview a guy on the Phillies is worth more than any picture, any autograph. I mean, granted, like I don't really, like once you get here, you don't really care about autographs anymore. Like, but I think it's just worth more than like any of that kind of stuff. And it's cool. You get to go to Citizens Bank Park, get to be in the clubhouse. You get to build those relationships, right? You get to talk to Tom McCarthy and Scott Fransky when you go down to Philly, and you talk about those relationships. You go down to Philly and you see, and I think one of the guys in the Phillies I'm probably closest with is Orion Kerkering, and like every time I see him, like we catch up for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's just like it's not like, oh my gosh, that's a Phillies player. It's, hey, it's just a guy that I'm buds with because we, work together, with Reading. He eventually got the Philly. And I know like that list is going to, continue to grow over the years. Hopefully Aiden Miller, Gabriel Rinconis, Justin Crawford, Mick Abel, like all those guys get there eventually. And a lot more guys. I hope everyone on this team gets to the big leagues at some point. And, I think it's cool to know like, hey, like I got to work with a big leaguer. And I think the really cool thing about working in minor league baseball, especially at this stage, is like you are like you're the PR guy, right? So it's like you're the one in the weeds. You get to work with all the coaches, all the players. You get to know everyone super well. So when they get to the next level, it's like, hey, like I know that guy. Not to like turn like sappy or stuff like that, but it's like I'm sitting in the broadcast booth right now, and like up that way, I have like a piece of paper that has like all of my like broadcast reminders on it. So like little things like say swung on when a guy hits the ball, inning and score, counting outs, whatever, like all that stuff. And at the very bottom, well, I have in big text: one, relax and have fun. And two, this is baseball. It's the Phillies. You're living a dream. So make sure to enjoy it and take it all in because the days are so fast. There's so much to do. There's days where it's like roster moves, lineup changes, whatever. But there's times, and I know I did a lot my first year. I would kind of sit there and look around and be like, yeah, like I'm calling a professional baseball game right now. And I still try to do it because you don't want to take that for granted because, I know what I do is really cool. And there's a lot of people who kill to be in this position, me included. If I wasn't here, I would kill to be here. And I try not to forget that. So yeah, just super thankful, super fortunate for this opportunity. And a chance to grow and hopefully do this for a long time. I'm really happy with Reading. I'm really happy with the position that I'm in here. So I know I'm in a great spot to grow and just continue to improve and hone my craft and see where it takes me from here.
What's the day to day of a home game? I don't think people outside of our industry always wonder how busy that truly is, and that there is so much, especially in the minors, that is more than just putting the headset on and going live at whatever time first pitch is on a given night.
Yeah, day to day. It's about a 12-hour day, give or take. Usually on a weekday you get in between 9 and 10. Usually on a weekend you can push that to like closer to 11. First thing I do in the morning is game notes. I'm always the kind of person like that's the first thing I want to get done in my day is get my game notes done. It's usually about 90 minutes to 2 hours. I've gotten to a point, especially once you get into a groove, where I can get it done in about 90 minutes or less. So you get that done. My goal, I'm just going to work off a 7 o'clock game day. My goal is by about noon every day to be done. If I'm not done, obviously I can just knock it out quickly. Usually around noon, I try to get over to the clubhouse, drop off stat packs, meet with our manager for a couple of minutes, get lineups, get any questions I need answered, or if he has any questions for me, make sure that we get those answered. Of course, the two of us have an open line of communication via text. So if I need anything, if he needs anything, like we can always text or call each other. I might catch up with some coaches, some players while I'm out there. If I need anything from any players or coaches, I'll try and get that. I usually try and get that early in the day before they kind of get into the weeds of their things, whether that's an interview or I need them to fulfill a media request, etc. Yeah, from there, once I have lineups, it's a lot of social media. It's a lot of just getting lineup sheets printed. If there's roster moves, kind of handling that. And then, fulfilling media requests if those come in. That's usually early to mid-afternoon. I'll watch batting practice. I'll finally, hopefully at some point after batting practice, fill out my book, knock out my pregame interview, then call the game. During the game, whether it's me or it's our, PR assistant, that's doing the live tweeting for the game, writing the game story. Then once the game's over, you got to go run. I don't do the post game show. My broadcast partner does because I go run box scores out to the clubhouse. Meet with the managers. Do you have any questions? Anything you need to look at? Nope. Okay, great. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Then from there, come back upstairs, finish up your work for the night. Make sure your press release gets emailed out. Go to bed. Wake up. Do it all again tomorrow.
I know this is obviously again you're happy where you are. Year three, doing this in the organization you are is great. what's still ahead? Like, what's still the dream to vault from here? When you do take the next step from Reading, whenever that is.
Needs to be the voice of a big league team. I think that's kind of where my sights are focused on right now. God willing, I'll be very thankful to one day get to be the voice of a big league team, whether it's on TV or radio.
We'll get you some rapid fire to get you out of here because I know even on a road series, there's still plenty to do during the day. Favorite baseball movie?
Probably Field of Dreams.
Good pick. I mean, always, usually, it's a popular one, but right.
Yeah.
I know there's so many football travel stories you have for Penn State. I know it's a few occasions when you're on the road with Reading, but do you have a favorite baseball travel story? Can be any aspect of what the trip is.
Cool. I mean, there's a few that you might be involved with. I think Portland 2023 was a fun trip for a lot of reasons. I mean, great baseball, obviously, but I think that was fun. I got to do a full six gamer at Binghamton to close the 2023 season. That was really fun. Got to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, I don't have any crazy road trip stories. I mean, like, my craziest road trip story was probably the 8-hour delay we had in Chicago's airport coming back from the Auburn trip in 2022. But baseball wise, I mean, Altoona's been a good trip. Bowie's been a good trip. Harrisburg's always a good trip. I mean, Portland's always a blast just because I think Portland's one of the best Eastern League cities. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't have any that stand out, but more just just great trips and great times with great people.
What about a bus breaking down on Martha's Vineyard?
No, I didn't think about that one. Yeah, yeah. I guess second scrimmage 2022 Cape season in Cotuit. Uh, I could go on for days about this one, but yeah, uh, our bus broke. So we had to take the ferry from Falmouth to the Vineyard. Called the game on the Vineyard. Tightest booth ever, first of all. And then had to take a bus back to the ferry back to the Cape after the game. First of all, we were going out to the Vineyard. I won't say who, I won't say what, but one of the interns was maybe giving a little bit of lip or back talking a little bit to the person
I don't
at the
think back
pier,
talk was the word. It was having some fun, and not everybody was,
giving me
in a
some
fun, happy mood that day.
some attitude, whatever word he said. I forget what was I forget what Southern Harbor. I forget where we left. Bar Harbor? No, I don't remember where we left from.
Steamship Authority?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so took the ferry over. The ferry ride was fun. And then the trip back was just a hoot. So we're on the bus. The bus breaks down. And it's this bus driver. And she's got, I guess, her grandkids with her on the bus. And first of all, the bus breaks down. And she just starts yelling. She's like, Bennett called Pierce. This bus bleeping sucks. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. And then the grandkids, I guess, are kind of being a pain. So our coach at the time, has this heavy Southern accent, and he goes, be nice to your mom. And she goes, I'm not mom, I'm Mimi. And he goes, be nice to Mimi. So that was that was great. We get off the bus breaks down. We're eating freaking spaghetti and meatballs out of a styrofoam container. One of our guys, I won't name names, but he's someone who's a first round draft pick, was afraid to go in the woods because they told him bears were going to be there. So he takes his bat into the woods. The bus finally comes. We get on the bus. And
You're
we
also
go back to
forgetting she had this woman had to go walk like a mile, almost a mile and a half back to where the bus facility was
the go
parked
what
to
to
go
bring the
get
next bus.
to go get another bus with these two grandkids who were still screaming at each other.
Yeah. So we get to the pier and we had missed our scheduled ferry. So luckily there was a second ferry. We got ice cream. Forget where the place was, but the ice cream was great. Then I remember another one of our
Matt
players,
Martha's, shout out.
Man Martha's, great ice cream. The best ice cream. I don't know about that. I went to Penn State, Berkey Creamery for the win. Anyway, one of our players, I believe, fished a baby crab out of the water. So that was fun. And then we finally got on the ferry. We went back. I don't remember what time we got back, but that was a fun day. I think we almost rear-ended somebody on the drive to the ferry that day too. So now that I think might take the cake for one of the best road trip days. I'm trying to think. Did we have any more eventful road trips that summer? The Wendy's after the Orleans doubleheader was a fun time. Yeah, no, that was a yeah, that was a fun trip.
What's on your speaker when you're either writing your book out or doing your game notes in the morning? I know it was a lot of Zach Brown band and Kane Brown. in Cotuit. What is it pumping these days out in Reading?
I don't know. I haven't played music as much as I usually do. A lot of times I'll just open up the window and whatever's playing through the stadium. We've gone a lot of classic rock this year. I try to usually go country, but usually that gets voted down. But yeah, for me, it's usually country. If the Phillies game's going, I might throw on WIP or the radio or something like that. Or I might just, it's like when I sit in the booth do my book is also like the one time a day I can actually like talk on the phone. So I might call a friend or I might call my girlfriend or something like that just to be like, hey, still here. I still exist. Like it's been a long day, but it's the 30 minutes to an hour a day where I can like actually sit down and like decompress, fill out my book. It's very relaxing.
Who's your dream broadcast partner?
That's a great question. Hmm. I don't know. I think John Kruk would be really fun. If I'm gonna go like a color guy strictly, I'm gonna go John Kruk just because like he keeps you on your toes.
Baseball hot take for the season. It's very early. I know, people in Philadelphia are freaking out about the Phillies bullpen right now, despite the fact that, they've already won 13 games this season at the time of this recording. What's something you feel is going to happen when we look back on the season, in early November?
I think the Phillies are gonna be fine. I think that's the first thing. My hot take is I think Andrew Painter comes up over the summer and is like lights out. I think with that, the Phillies either move Ranger Suarez or move Ranger Suarez to the bullpen. Uh, and he becomes like one of the best relievers because obviously they need some bullpen help right now. I think Suarez can be that guy. If you're looking at a rotation of, Wheeler, Sanchez, Nola, uh, Painter, and I know I'm missing one off the top of my head right now.
Luzardo?
Luzardo, that's it. Luzardo.
God.
Is a pretty good five. I don't think they're
The
gonna go
Red
six
Sox
man.
writer, there's the Phillies rotation better. Wow.
Yeah, it happens. I can tell you Redding's rotation though off the top of my head, but yeah, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. I also think as a minor league guy, I think we're going to see Justin Crawford get up this summer, and I think we're going to see Otto Kemp get up this summer too.
Usually that would be the end of this, but the fact that we are releasing this podcast on Thursday, April 24th, 2025, I have to know from the resident Pennsylvanian, who are not the Phillies, who are the Eagles taking at 32?
Honestly, I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to trade back. That's what they did in 2018, last time they won the Super Bowl. Ironically enough, I made an Amazon order yesterday. Total on the order, 4133.
Ah, ha ha ha.
Sorry
Fun.
to rub it in. I think they're going to trade back. They have a ton of picks the next 2 years. I think they're going to trade back. And I think they're going to trade back, make their second round pick. I think they're going to try to use a lot of their ammo from the later rounds the next 2 years and try to move back up into day two this year and try to really stock up on day two, early day three guys. I don't know who it's going to be. Uh, I'd like a D lineman because I think that's the position you really need to restock. I would really like to see them kind of work on the lines this draft because those are the two spots that need some depth, especially, your line's locked up, but, Lane Johnson's getting a little bit older, so you don't know how much, he's here for at least 2 more years, but just kind of stock up D line, O line is kind of the big thing. I don't really have a name, and no, AJ Brown is not going to get traded to New England. I've had people try to tell me that, and I'm like, no, it's ridiculous. Like, no, he's a wide receiver one for the next 2-3 years. Like, he's staying in Philly.
So you know if Abdul Carter's there at 4, if you're Howie Roseman, you're not making the call.
No, I mean, your defense already has so much turnover this year. Why would you make your offense also have the turnover this year? Like, no, like Saquon, AJ, Devontae, your line's mostly back. Why have more turnover than you need to have?
Well, we'll find out, and we can circle back to this in about 24 hours after the end of the first round. Jake, it was so great having you on again, and best of continued success in year 3 in Reading. I know it's a fun summer coming up ahead for you, and we'll see you up in Portland for Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, see you up there. Maybe we'll do an in-person podcast up there. You never know. But appreciate you having me on. Enjoyed chatting with you. Not like we get to do that much at all. So always a pleasure, and can't wait to hop on again soon.